Well, hi everyone. My name is Tiara de Guzman. I work in career services, and today I'll be talking about interviewing, with a focus on the career fair. But just to start off with some information about our office, career services is still open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Right now, we are completely virtual, so you can always contact us via email and or sign up for an appointment. But we have drop-in hours every single day. 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. And I'll put that link to drop-in hours into the chat, just in case after this you'd like to go get your resume or cover letter reviewed by one of our peer career coaches. So that is every single day, 12:30 to 3:30. In addition to that, we have 15-minute, 30-minute, and hour-long appointments on everything from like document cleanup, which is like reviewing your resume, cover letter, or LinkedIn, to helping you out with interview strategies or job search strategies, career assessments. We also have one called salary negotiation, which is a fairly new one, where we review how to go over your salary and how to negotiate a salary when you get a full-time job offer. And we also have career exploration mock interviews. So we have a lot of different appointments. If you'd like to sign up for an appointment, all you have to do is go to iit.joinhandshake.com, and there will be an appointments tab there where you can sign up for an appointment with one of our coaches. And because we are in career fair season, I do have our current flyer here for the spring career fair. So that is Thursday, February 25th. So we're coming up on 2 weeks away. And yes, this year it will be all virtual like it was last semester. It'll take place through the platform, The Intern X. And I'm going to give you some like resources to like understand that platform, and also some flyers for our upcoming programming where you can use the platform before time, get prepared, that sort of thing. So feel free to like take notes as we go throughout this presentation, and also feel free to put questions in the chat if you have more specific questions about the career fair or your own career development. But yes, the career fair is happening. You can register as whenever you would like the registration link is right there. I'll also put that in the chat if people need a clickable link. And yeah, you should definitely sign up, and there will be a list of employers who are currently coming. You can prepare beforehand to meet with those employers. So some learning objectives. So by the end of this presentation, our hope is that you will know how to answer commonly asked interview questions. So we're going to go over 6 or 7 most commonly asked questions, what you should say in response to them. And then we'll also focus on what questions you should be asking employers as well. We'll talk about how to interact with recruiters at the career fair, and I'll offer some different advice about like how to do that. And then also, how do you create responses to interview questions that are clear, concise, values-based, lets them know your strengths and your past experiences. So we'll be going over all of that today. And once again, if you have any questions as we go throughout, either just unmute yourself and start talking, or you can post in the chat. So I feel like it's always helpful to frame the presentation in terms of what employers want and what they are looking for. So these are the 3 areas that employers are typically looking for: skills, motivation, and fit. So the first question, skills, or the first question, can you do the job, is associated with skills. And that usually is when they're assessing your resume and trying to see, does this person have the necessary skills it would take to actually complete this job, right? So that's like, the example I always use is the like lifeguard. Like if you are going for a lifeguard position, at bare minimum, like, can you swim, right? Or at bare minimum for a CS job, can you do Python or Java or something like that? So, or are you familiar with those platforms? So can you do the job is the very first thing they're always going to ask. Will you do the job? So this is where they sort of assess motivation. So during an interview, if they ask you the question, why do you want to be an engineer? Or why do you want to go into our field? This is where they ask that question and sort of gather some information about whether you would be a good fit for their company. So if we're using the lifeguard metaphor, this would be, okay, so we know that you have the skills to be a lifeguard, but do you actually want to be a lifeguard? And if so, why did you choose to go into this position? They want to make sure that they have people at their company who are interested in like excelling and are interested in making an impact. So they want people who want to be there. And that's sort of where they assess that. And then the last question is, will you fit with our organization? And fit is something we don't talk about enough in career development, but basically fit is that idea of like, are you a person who can come to our company and fit in with our values, with our mission? Do you know what our mission is? Does it vibe with you? And this question is usually seen in where we're going today, which is the interview, right? Because in the interview, especially when you get an on-site interview, by that time, they know that you're qualified, right? By that time, they've already reviewed your resume multiple times. They already know what skills and experiences you have. But by the time you get an on-site interview and they invite you to their company, or virtually or in person, they invite you to their company, that's where they're trying to assess, is this person a good fit for us as a company? Will this person come to our company and be able to make good connections and carry out the mission and values that we have here? And so it's important to sort of have this framing and remember that. In addition to that, the data around what employers are actually looking for, this is the 2019 data, but it's the same, basically the same every year. It's the same as 2020, which is ability to communicate, both written and verbal. So can you write an email? Can you give a presentation? Can you discuss your ideas in a meeting in a way that makes sense for everybody around you? So communication is number one. But outside of that, things like problem solving, working in a team, taking initiative, right? Like these are the types of things that employers want from all of their employees. So if you have experiences with this, make sure to highlight them on both your resume and throughout the interview process. And so we have an understanding sort of what, we have an understanding of what employers are looking for. In addition to that, some general things that all employers want. They want leadership skills, teamwork, people who know how to take initiative and practice time management, people who practice attention to detail, right? So these are, once again, some of these things that you should be highlighting both on your resume and in your interview. And so that being said, so now it's sort of like the prep phase, right? So what are some ways that you can actually prepare for an interview when you're going into it? And so some general ones, the first one, and I always say this, and I'll write this in the chat, I call it your non-negotiables, right? So non-negotiables are basically the thing that answers the question, what do you need to work at a specific company? So if we're thinking about summer internships, would you like a paid or unpaid internship? Would you like a co-op that goes 6 months, or would you like an internship that ends at 3 months? Would you like that mostly ends at 3 months? Would you like to work at a big, small, or like medium-sized company? Do you want to work at a company with a brand name like a Google or Microsoft? Or are you okay with a smaller company or a startup that's still building up, right? So before you even go into the interview or job search process, it's important to really sit down with yourself and ask yourself what it is that you need and what it is that you want. The reason why is because when you go into an interview, they're always going to ask the question of, why do you want to work here? What do you know about our company? What is it about us that makes you want to come here? And in order to answer that question in an honest way, you need to have been intentional with the companies that you're choosing. So for me, when I graduated from grad school a few years ago, I know myself and I was like, I don't want to live in a suburb and I don't want to live in a small town. I'm a city girl. So I only applied to companies in Chicago, New York, Boston, New York. I already said New York twice. I love New York. Chicago, New York, Boston, Philly, and DC. And that was it. And I wasn't considering any other jobs in any other places because I was like, I just don't want to live anywhere outside of those places. And so for me, I knew that. So going in, when I got different interviews and stuff, that was one way I could say, I really want to work at this company because I love this area and this location and there's a lot of opportunities. And so I want to move into that area, right? So for you, figuring out how much salary or how much pay do you need for your internship or job in order to sustain yourself and to feel like you're not being like cheated. So asking yourself these questions is going to be really helpful. And before you even start the job search process, you should have an understanding of what it is you're looking for in terms of pay, location, company type, company culture, etc. The second thing is do research about the company. They will usually ask the question, what do you know about our company, or why do you want to work here? And we'll talk about that in a second. But it's helpful to look up the recent projects, who your potential supervisors will be. You can always type in, go to Google and type in company mission and values. So you can go to Google and type in Microsoft mission and values, and it'll come up with their mission and values, what they stand for, what they're trying to achieve. And if you connect with that, then that is a company you should add to your list. And when they ask that question of like, what do you know about our company, you'll actually be able to answer it because you did your research ahead of time. So making sure, do your research ahead of time, and also practice. So shameless plug, Career Services does have a 60-minute mock interview appointment where we would meet like this virtually, and I would ask you around 6 to 10 questions, and I would give you feedback and tell you like, hey, like make sure to look at the camera, make sure to like answer this question in a certain way. So we do have that appointment, and once again, if you'd like to do an appointment with us, go to iit.joinhandshake.com. and that's where you can sign up. But in addition to that, before you even start the interview process, especially with the upcoming career fair, it's important to know the basic logistics of like what you're getting into. And so what I have here are 2 different flyers for 2 different programs coming up that will be a part of our career fair prep for this upcoming year. So the first program will be this Friday, and it will be from 12:45 to 1:45. You can go to iit.joinhandshake.com and go to events to sign up for these programs. But the first one will be basically how do you sign into Intern X? How do you sign into Intern X? How do you use the platform? What companies are coming? How do you research which companies are coming? How do you sign up to meet with a specific company? So if you need that information, all of that will be covered at our career fair prep session. And then it will afterwards be recorded and put up as well so that you have access to it. But feel free to actually come live so that you can like get your questions answered. And like I said, that's this Friday. And so that's this Friday for career fair prep. And then next Friday will be valuable insights from recruiters and alumni. So basically, we have invited alumni from all different departments. And we have also invited recruiters too. Recruiters will take up the first 30 minutes of the session, and they'll basically talk about what they're looking for in students, how you should prepare, all of that information. And then we'll have 30 minutes where alumni answer questions, talk about their own experiences at the career fair, how they got their first positions, all that stuff. So if you don't already have these like saved in your calendar, make sure Fridays, this Friday and next Friday, 12:45 to 1:45 virtually, we will be offering this so that you can know what to do for the career fair next in a few weeks. But to just give you some small logistics of what will happen, the way it's happening this year is we're doing it virtually, and you can sign up for and be asked to do 10-minute conversations with recruiters. And basically those conversations can go however recruiters would like them to go, which is sort of frustrating. But recruiters can either ask you a ton of questions and conduct their meeting like an interview, or they will ask you if you have questions. And that is why you have to be super prepared and show up to different companies with very specific and targeted questions, which we'll go over. So making sure that like you're prepared for both. You're prepared to potentially be interviewed and prepared to ask questions in case recruiters ask you what you need. The recruiters may offer an interview at the end of your session. That does not mean always, but sometimes recruiters at the end will be like, hey, I really enjoyed that conversation with you. Do you have time tomorrow in your schedule to set up an interview? And so interviews can happen very fast. So it's important that you sign up with us to for a mock interview prior to the career fair so that we can like help you get your things together before then. Any questions about that, about career fair prep or about the career fair with recruiters? And we're gonna dive a little bit more into it, but any questions so far? Okay, cool. So that being said, let us dive into the most frequently asked questions in interviews and how to answer them. So the first question you will always be asked, this question will always be asked, which makes no sense to me because they read your profile, but they want to see, with this question, they want to see that you know how to sell yourself, that you know how to articulate the things that you've done in the past. And so that's why this question is important, even if it feels sort of like you're reiterating everything they already read on your resume. So in response to tell me about yourself, you should have a 30-second to 1 minute long elevator pitch that is clear and concise and to the point, right? What I like to suggest is present, past, future for tell me about yourself for that question. And I'll explain what that means. So let's say I am applying to work as a career coach at, at Google. So I would start with the present. Hello there, my name is Tiara de Guzman. I currently work as a career development coach at Illinois Institute of Technology. And then I would go to the past a little bit. I graduated from Ohio State and just received my master's a few years ago. And there I learned how to work with college students in a career capacity and really enjoyed it. And also did a project that led to insert outcome here. And then you go to the future. So that's why I am really excited to be here and to apply for this position. I've always been a fan of Google, so I hope that I can do a good job. So that is like a very basic and very dry way of doing that, where you start with the present, then give them a little context and talk a little bit about your past and how you got here. And then the future, what led you to apply? Why are you excited to work with them? And so some of the things that you can include: who you are, what you're looking for in terms of like, I am so excited to be here for this internship or for this full-time job opportunity, what talents and strengths you will bring to the role. So when you mention the past sort of piece, you can mention, I have, in the past, in my class projects, I have a 4.0 GPA, and I'm also the president of a fraternity that focuses in engineering. So I'm excited for this opportunity. Something like that. And then also what led you to apply to the position and why do you want to work with that company? So tell me about yourself, really like a 30-minute or 30-second to 1 minute response where you just describe like who you are and what you're looking for. Any questions about that? Tell me about yourself. All right. Second most commonly asked question, why do you want to work here? They will either ask you, why do you want to work here? Why do you want to be an engineer? Some type of question that sort of assesses your motivation, as we talked about earlier. So the first thing I can say, create an answer that is authentic, right? So this answer should be true to you. So don't try to make something up because you think it's what they want to hear. Really do some self-reflection on why that particular company sounds so interesting to you, right? And do your research and connect with their values. So knowing Google, for instance, which I keep using, but it's just the one that's popping to my head. Knowing Google is a company that really centers innovation, groundbreaking research, doing things in a new and exciting way. So in your interview with the Google, for instance, you would focus on those things. You would say, I want to work at Google because you have taken the world by storm with all of the different projects and tools that you've come out with. And I want to be in a place that is dedicated to innovation and to groundbreaking research, right? So you find a way to connect what they're known for with what you want and with the skills that you want to build while at that company. So that should be the response to both why do you want to work here or why do you want to be an engineer or why do you want to be a insert here. So that could mean doing some reflection on like, when did you decide you wanted to go into computer science or engineering? Like when did the realization happen, right? And then sort of preparing for that question in that way. So mostly with this question, they really want to assess, so if we give you this internship or job, have you given thought as to how this is going to help you? And have you given thought as to how this is going to give you the skills you need for the future? So they're assessing your motivation, making sure that you know why you're there. And not just I'm here because I'm supposed to be because I heard you're supposed to get an internship, right? Like they want a better answer than that. Okay, third most commonly asked question. So this is a tricky one. So what would you say are some of your strengths and weaknesses? This is a very common one. They will typically ask you, either what are the things you would bring to our company, what are the things that you are good at, what are your greatest skills. They may ask it in that way. And then with weaknesses, they may ask, what are your areas of improvement? Tell us about a time you made a mistake. So they're basically questions to sort of assess, like, do you have a good understanding of yourself, what you're good at, what you struggle with, and what you need to improve on? And so with the strengths question, be honest. Be honest. If you think that, so with strengths, sometimes it's easy to just be like, let me say what they want to hear. Like, oh, I'm really great at Python. Yeah, like for sure. I've been doing it forever. Be careful, right? Like you want to make sure you actually know how to do that thing. And if you are learning something, it is okay also to say, I'm a very quick learner and I've picked up on these softwares like pretty fast. So that's a good thing to say, but try not to like say a strength just because you think it's what they want to hear. So being honest with that. Second thing, use the job posting, right? It's there for a reason. If in the job posting it says, we're looking for a person who is great with collaboration, we're looking for a person who takes initiative and starts new projects, mention those as your strengths, especially if it's true for you, right? So mention those because then when they look back to their job posting to see, does this person match what we're looking for? They will see that you have experience and chose the strengths that they're looking for in the person they want. So use the job posting for examples. And then also giving clear examples. So sometimes I talk to students about these questions. I'll be like, what are your greatest strengths? And they're like, yeah, I'm definitely a leader and I have really great attention to detail. And I'm like, okay, give me more, right? So make sure to give a clear example. So for instance, I would say I'm a great communicator and presenter. I do over 40 presentations per semester at Illinois Tech, and it's something that I've always been good at, and I really enjoy doing it, right? So give a clear example of a time you've used this skill in the past and how you use it presently. Okay, questions about strengths. Oh, I also find it helpful to number them. So say, I am a great communicator and also a really great team player, and then go into those two examples rather than like, sometimes I'll talk to people and they'll either say just one strength or they'll say so many and then they don't give any context to what those things are. They'll be like, yeah, I'm a leader. I have a good attention to detail. I'm a team player. Like, you know, you don't want to say all of those things. You want to say like choose 2 or 3 that sort of makes sense and then use those and give clear examples of how you use them. Any questions for that one? I feel like strengths is not too bad. I feel like weaknesses is usually what people struggle with. So, okay. So weaknesses. So stay away from saying a weakness that is needed for the job. Okay. So, hi, I would love to be a babysitter. I really don't like kids and I don't get along with them, right? Like you don't want to say a like weakness that has to do directly with the position. For you all, a weakness that would be bad to say, attention to detail because you need it in your field. Struggling to understand like technology, like things like that. Let's see, I'm trying to think of other ones that would be not great for you all to use. Time management is always a bad one. Don't say that. Or organization. So yeah, so those types of ones you don't want to say because those are just not good to say. Those are really bad weaknesses to have. Even if it is something you struggle with, like don't say it. Another thing people sometimes do, and I would highly recommend not to do, people often say perfectionism or that they just work too hard or that they are involved in so much. Like I would stay away from saying that because it comes off as, because so people used to say it, but the thing is that every time you say that, it comes off like not really a weakness, like you haven't actually reflected on an area of improvement. You're just saying like, yeah, I just work so hard and that's like the thing that I'm bad at, like, you know, and it doesn't come off as genuine. So make sure to choose a weakness that like doesn't have anything to do with you working hard or being a perfectionist or anything like that. So when you are discussing a weakness, tie a weakness to a strength. That is one of the best ways I have seen it used. So for instance, I would say for myself, I am a person who like absolutely gets along with people and is very friendly. And that's helpful for my job because I work with people. That being said, sometimes the downside to that is I take up a lot of space or my colleagues who are introverts or a little bit quieter don't get a lot of room. So the ways I've worked on that are I make sure to let other people speak in meetings before me, and I take notes and ask my supervisor to hold me accountable with that, right? So you say the weakness, and then you give a few examples of how you've overcome the weakness. Another good weakness, because you all are college students, is saying that you like have a lack of experience, because I mean, that's not wrong. So you can say, I don't have any formal experience in the field, but I do have class projects and I have worked on this, and I'm in a club and I've learned things there as well. So that's another good weakness that you can say. Another weakness is presentation skills, because a lot of people don't like presenting and hate public speaking. So you can say that that's a weakness as well. But always, no matter what weakness you choose, always make sure to choose a weakness and talk about how you have either overcome it or how you are continuing to work on it, right? So you never just say, I really struggle with this thing, and then that's it. You always say, I struggle with this thing. The way I have worked on it is I have a calendar to keep myself on track. I make sure to check in with my supervisor about it. So make sure to have like something to back it up. Questions about that? I know that question is really hard for people, like greatest weaknesses. You can either put it in the chat or speak if you have it. Okay, cool. Yeah, and feel free, you can always like shoot me a weakness and be like, hey, is this a good one like to use? Like, does this make sense? And I can like give you some feedback on it as well. Okay, so frequently asked question 4. This one is usually what is called either a behavioral or situational question. And basically what that means is it's a question where they're asking you to tell a story of a past experience. This is one people sometimes struggle with too, because it just feels like you have to go more in depth with whatever you're talking about. So this is the time when they're like, tell us about a time when you made a mistake. Tell us about a time when you achieved, tell us about your greatest accomplishment, stuff like that. So they'll ask you questions that are sort of like they're asking you to give a story or tell them about an experience. And so the way to do this is to use what we call the PARS method to answer this. So PARS stands for problem, actions, results, and skills. And it basically guides you, this method guides you through how you should answer a specific question. So the example I typically use is tell us about a time when you had a conflict on a team. What was the conflict and how did you overcome it? So if I'm going to say it like this, but don't say it like this. Like you should say it not say problem, actions, results. Like you should say it in a more natural way. But tell us about a time that you had a conflict on a team. What was the conflict and how did you overcome it? So the problem. So I worked on a class project with a few students and we could never find a time to meet. So that is the problem. The action that I decided to take is I created a doodle poll so that we could figure out how to meet with each other. And then I also created subcommittees so that we could meet in smaller groups and still get our work done. 3, the result. The result of that was we actually ended up getting an A on the assignment, and our professor said that it was one of the best projects. And I think that happened because skills. I am a person who is great at communicating and making sure and staying on task and being practicing good time management, right? So that's a way of saying the question. Once again, you wouldn't do problem, actions, results, skills, but you would say that story in a way that takes you through those steps. So you always want to like go through all 4. Also, this can either be the PARS or SARS method, because for instance, they may ask you, tell us about your greatest achievement, and that wouldn't be a problem. That would just be a situation. So you could say, my greatest achievement is I worked with my club to put on an amazing program for Black History Month. Actions, right? What I ended up doing is I came up with the presentation for it and worked with different organizations on campus to make the program happen. The result was we ended up having 500 people come and they were all really happy and excited. And I think that worked because I'm a really great team player and really good at implementing ideas, right? So you take them through that process of like all 4 pieces, what's going on, what the situation is, and how you learned from it. And yeah, there are so many questions online where they will give examples of like behavioral or situational questions. There's so many. Tell us about a time when you struggled to achieve something. Tell us about a time when you reconsidered a decision you once made. Like people, yeah, so there are all types of questions people can ask. So just having, being prepared is going to be important for this question. I will also say what I would recommend, especially if you're having virtual interviews, print out your resume and have it in front of you when you're doing your virtual interview, and review your resume and come up with 2 to 3 stories for each experience. So let's say you have 5 experiences on your resume. 3 have to do with class projects and 2 have to do with leadership activities on campus. Come up with a story like, oh yeah, I remember I was the president of that org and I did have conflict with that one team member and it eventually was solved. Or I remember that class project where I did a really great job and I got an A+ on the class project and it was the highest grade in the class. So review your resume and come up with stories that you can use ahead of time because they're going to ask you and you want to have some ready to go. Okay. The next question. So once again, this is any type of like, I would say this question is like any type of futuristic question. So like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you hope to accomplish over the course of your career? What's your long-term vision, right? So they may ask you questions like that. So it's helpful to have an answer. What I would suggest, especially if they ask you how will your experience at our company like help you in your career goals, make sure to talk about how the company will give you the skills and experiences you hope to gain. So if you are getting a summer internship, be sure to say, yeah, so I'm still learning a lot of softwares. And the reason why I want to work with your company is because I know that you'll be able to train me and help me excel in some of these different softwares. Or I'm excited for a full-time job here because I know that after the second year, we start supervising students or start supervising people. And so I want to be a supervisor one day or a manager. And so that's why I'm coming to this company. So whatever things are giving you new skills and experiences, make sure to focus on those. And I have to be honest on all of these, but honestly, it's a big one. So what I don't want is a lot of companies do not expect you to be at a company forever, but they also don't want to hear if you're trying to leave. So if you're like, oh, this is a smaller company, I'm just going to be here a year and then like go to Google. Like don't say something like that, even if that's the truth. Instead, sort of focus on, once again, the skills that you want and the experiences you hope to have at the company. And yeah, if you haven't already, you don't have to know exactly where you would like to be in 5 years. I don't know if anybody knows like exactly like where they'll be in 5 years, but having some sort of idea, even if it's like, I'm invested over the next 5 years in exploring these 3 different industries or these 3 different focus areas. So making sure to have some answer to it, to what you hope to do in the future, even if it's not completely clear. Okay, and then the last most commonly asked question, this will always be like, they will always ask this, what questions do you have for us? If you need a quick question or like an easy question, the best question you can ask is, what do next steps look like, right? You should always be asking that because you want to know, when am I going to hear back from you? Will there be another interview? Like, so you want to know that information. So always ask, what can I expect after this interview, or what do next steps look like? So feel free to ask that. For those full-time job folks, all right, so stay away from salary questions unless they bring it up. And I'll talk about that just briefly. So for full-time jobs and internships, it's a different thing. I would say for an internship, I would just not ask about salary at all, because usually the salary for them will be fixed and it's not changing, and it'll be like a per hour rate. And that will be all. So salary for internships is very different. You sort of just find a company that is giving you the amount of money that you want. But that is it for internships. For full-time jobs, often what they will do is they will ask the question, what are your salary expectations? And when they ask that question, what they're doing is testing you to see if you did your research to see how much engineers make in a specific area. So when they ask that question, what are your salary expectations? The correct answer, or an answer that you should say would be, I did my research and I found that engineers in this specific location make between early to mid or mid to late. So for instance, I would say, let's say I'm going for a mechanical engineer job in Chicago. They say, what are your salary expectations? I would say, I did my research and I found that mechanical engineers make between early 70s and mid 70s in the Chicago area. Is that in alignment with your expectations? So that's a way of turning the question back on them, and saying the question that way is a way to protect yourself. Because one, you're not saying that's what you want. You're saying that's what the industry standard is, right? And another reason why that protects you is because if they say, oh, sorry, like we are only offering 50, that's when you can say, oh, that's not like, oh, from my research, I saw that engineers make this much money. Another thing is never to give an exact number. So you never say like, yeah, I'm hoping for 75, because what if they were going to offer you 78 and now you said 75, and so that's like your cap, right? So always say early to mid or mid to late. So early 70s to mid 70s, mid 70s to late 80s, or whatever. So always give a range, never give an exact number. Yep. And then in the chat, Cassandra says, I've heard some people say that in response to a salary question, you should ask how much money is budgeted for this position. Yeah, you could also turn the question back on them. When they say, what are your salary expectations? You could say, yeah, I'm curious. Thank you for bringing up salary. I was wondering how much money is budgeted for this position. So you could say that. They did ask you a question though, so I feel weird about like not answering the question, because what if they pose it to you again and then you just sort of have to sit there with that. So I typically like to say, do your research ahead of time about what engineers make in a certain area or what people make in a certain area, so you can come with the research yourself. I would say, so the issue is, so unless they mention it, you really shouldn't be asking about salary, because when you ask about it, for some reason, I don't know why it's like this, but the whole point is that it's like, oh, you must really not be concerned with the job, and instead you're concerned with like the payment. That's like usually the idea around it. So usually it's best not to ask any questions about salary and just wait until you receive an offer. Because when you receive an offer, that's when you can say, thank you so much for this offer. Can I take a few days to talk it over with my family? And that's when you come to me and we talk about like what you can negotiate and how that works, right? So I would say don't bring it up unless they do, but you can, some people do recommend like turning the question on them and saying, yeah, I'm curious how much money is budgeted for this position. The only time I would ask, and I'll say this caveat, if they ask you to travel to them and they are not paying you for that, that is when I would ask about salary, because you want to make sure it's worth your time and that you're not just spending $400 on a flight to go somewhere for a company that's offering $20,000 a year. Like, you know, you want to make sure that you're in a good place. So yeah, I go back and forth on it, but what I would mostly say is do your research ahead of time. If they ask you questions about salary, be able to talk about what people currently make in a specific area. And then, yeah, after that, come to like my office so we can talk about, you can negotiate a lot of things, not just salary. You can negotiate vacation days and start date and all this stuff. So make sure to come to us so we can help you with that. But yes, that was a good like 5 minutes. But yeah, salary is fascinating. Feel free to come to my, we have a salary negotiation appointment if you'd like to learn more about it. But yes, ask questions you really want the answer to, but don't ask questions that you can easily find online. So a question that's so general, like what is the company culture like? Or what are the responsibilities for this job? Like you can read that in the posting. So don't ask questions like that are so general that it's sort of like, oh, this person didn't do their research. Instead, ask questions that communicate your values and questions that show your interest in the position. So for instance, I value diversity and inclusion. So that's a question I always ask about. How much, diversity and inclusion initiatives does your company commit to every year? So that is a question I would ask because that's important to me and I want them to see that it's important to me. Other questions, what does professional development look like at your company? Professional development is like money for conferences, ability to get trainings and certifications and more education. So that's a good question to ask. And then you can also ask a mixture of both technical and personal questions. So a technical question would be like, what softwares do you use most often in your company? Or I saw that you all most recently started a new project. Can you tell me a little bit about the project, like what it is and how you all are completing that project? And then you can also ask personal questions. What is your favorite thing about the job? What does an intern need to be successful here? What does collaboration look like at your company, right? So try to ask a mixture of technical and personal questions and try to stay away from questions about money or about something you could have already like looked up online and figured out. Also, I usually suggest try to have 3 to 5 questions because sometimes at the beginning of an interview, they do that intro where they'll be like, yeah, so my name is this and here's our company and here are the things we're looking for. And they may answer some of your questions in that opening title. So in that opening introduction. So make sure to have more than 3 to 5 questions so that you can answer it properly and just like be good from there. And so, yeah, so those are the commonly asked questions that recruiters would typically ask. At the career fair, you can expect that they may ask you questions like that, especially why do you want to work here? What do you know about our company? What skills and talents do you have, such as like what strengths, weaknesses do you have? So you can expect that if they take an interviewing approach to the career fair, then they may ask you that question, some of those questions. So that is the way to answer them. And I will also send out this recording and the presentation so that you have this to practice with. But there is an important part that we often don't talk about. Ending the interview. How do you end an interview well and make sure that you stay in their mind as a polite, like wonderful person that they want to work with, right? So of course, asking good questions is a big one because that's the end of the interview and that's often the last thing you're going to say to them. So make sure to ask really good questions that make them think. Ask about next steps. So like I said, make sure you never leave an interview without knowing when you're going to hear from them next, what the next step in the process is, when they'll notify you, because then you can check back in. So some companies will be like, yeah, so we're finishing up our second round of interviews with folks, and then we're going to invite people for on-site interviews within the next few weeks. So feel free to like keep checking your email and we'll let you know if you made it to that round. And then if you don't hear back in 3 weeks and 3.5 weeks or so, you can send them and say, hi, just checking in about my application. I really loved my interview a few weeks ago. I was wondering if I made it through the on-site interview phase, or can you give me the process? Can you give me not process? There's a word, status. Can you give me the status of my application, right? Which will let them know, which will tell you like whether you got the job, didn't get the job, what part of the process you're in. So making sure to ask about next steps. And then the last thing is following up. And this is a huge thing. You should always do this. Always, always, always. So following up is about either sending an email or a LinkedIn request that says, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed my time speaking with you all, and I look forward to hearing from you. So when you follow up, make sure to make your answers specific, because sometimes you'll have like an interview with 3 people. And if you copy and paste the same message to the 3 people, they all work together. They're all going to get the same message and be like, this one person said has the same message. So try to switch up a little bit of what you write in each message. For instance, you can do, in one message, you can say, thank you so much. I really enjoyed my time with you. I know that you would be the person who would be my future supervisor. So it was great hearing about your supervisory style. I look forward to hearing from you. And then maybe another person answered a question really well about why they want to work at the company. So then you go, thank you so much. I really enjoyed my time. Also, I appreciated your comments about why you love working at the company, and it made me even more excited for this role. So try to switch up a little bit, especially if you have an interview with more than one person. try to switch up your email a little bit, so that you're telling them like, hey, here are like the things I'm actually interested in. Here's what stuck out to me during the interview about you specifically. And plus, like, gratitude is a big part of the job search, right? Like saying thank you to the people who help you, the people who give you a chance, the people who are kind, right? If there is a person who organized the interview, such as a secretary or an HR person, making sure to also reach out to them and say thank you, even if they didn't interview you. Like, that's just like good rule of thumb, like saying thank you to the people who help. So make sure to do that. And then, yeah, super lastly, and then I can take a few minutes for questions if you have any. Remember, you are interviewing them too. And this is like huge. Honestly, a lot of like interviewing feels like dating, right? Like you would never go on a date and be like, I'm solely interested in how this person sees me. And I don't care. I don't care that they like, I'm trying to impress them so much that I'm not thinking about the good qualities that I bring, or, you know what I mean? Like you would never do that. So it's a similar thing with interviewing. You want to make sure that the company is nice. When you're there, make sure to look at how they talk to you in the process of how they help you out with finances, like with the salary negotiation process. Make sure that they're doing it in a kind way. Because if you are getting messages from a company that is sending you and being like, hey, just to let you know, like your interview is this date, and then a week later they change it, and then a week later they change it, and they're being very like back and forth. Do you really want to work for them? Did you like, you know what I mean? What if they're like that with your paychecks? Like you don't know. So remember, you are interviewing them too, and make sure, especially if you take an on-site visit and go visit their company, that you are keeping your eyes open. What is the company culture like? What is everybody wearing? Do they say hello to the secretary? Like, do they seem like they enjoy their work, or do they seem tired and stressed, right? So making sure that you also like look around and really take stock of what companies are like so that you can advocate for yourself. Same thing, by the way, with recruiters at the career fair. We have had all types of recruiters over the years. If a recruiter feels rude or doesn't seem interested in what you're saying, or God forbid is like not listening or is texting or something like that, first of all, make sure to let us know in career services so we can either not invite them back or like talk to them. But also ask yourself if that's a company you would want to work with, right? So really look at the way the recruiters treat you, because yeah, you deserve to be treated well, and you want to work at a company that's going to value you. So yes, okay. So I talked quite a lot. Any questions? And I'll leave up this slide. Feel free to email me if you have any individual questions as well, if you don't want to type them in the chat. Questions about interviewing? Going once. Okay, I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, so feel free. I'm going to put my interview. Gosh. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me like, that's what I should also send you. Feel free to email me if you'd like any interview help, or if you'd like to sign up for an appointment. But also do this right now if you have the time. We use a product called VMock that is an artificial intelligence platform that basically edits your resume for you in real time. So if you would like to, you can literally click on that link and sign up now for free, and it will review your resume within the next 15 seconds, which is cool. So making sure to do that. Okay. And then just got a question. I tend to ramble on sometimes when answering questions. How should I work not to do that? Yes. Okay. That is a great question. So some of the ways I would say to work on that. One, practice questions and write down your responses. So make sure to, like, a question like, tell me about yourself. Write down your response and then practice saying that response a few times and saying it and making it shorter and shorter, right? So it's helpful to like do that, because then it'll get into your head that this question should only be a certain period of time. It should not last as long as I can make it. So that's the first thing. Focus on what is most important. So especially if you're telling a story, Details like what somebody was wearing and what you thought about when that thing happened, or your process of getting somewhere. Unless that's a part of the question, you shouldn't be answering those things. If it's a story, especially beginning, middle, and end. What happened? What happened? What skills did you use? What were the results? Like, so just straight to the point, and trying not to ramble in that way. One last thing. I don't know why I didn't put this in the slide. I'm going to put it in the chat just so that you have it. So sometimes ramblers, we call them, sometimes ramblers will ramble because they don't know how to end a question. So they're like, where do I go in order to get to the end of this statement or this question? So you can either reiterate your interest in the position, which I'm putting this in the chat, sorry, in the position, or restate the question. Okay, so sometimes I do this a lot. Sometimes you get to the end of a sentence and you're like, so yep, and that's like not what you should do. So ways to do it. One, reiterate your interest in the position. So if it's the tell me about yourself question, towards the end I would say, and that's why I'm so excited to be here to interview for this position today. Or if the question is tell us about what are your greatest strengths, I would end the question with saying, and that's why I'm excited to be here today. I feel like I can bring a lot of my strengths to your organization as an intern. So you come back around to the fact that you're in an interview and to the fact that you want to work there with them. So that's the first way to do it. The second way to do it is to restate the question. So if the question is, what are your greatest weaknesses or areas of improvement? You would say, those are some of my greatest weaknesses or areas of improvement. So you literally restate the question so that there's a clear ending rather than allowing yourself to ramble on. And also come to my office and we can practice and I can help you get a little bit more clear on what you're saying. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Anyone else? Questions they have about interviewing, recruiters, the career fair? Make sure to RSVP for both Fridays, this Friday and next Friday. Any tips for keeping my eyes on my camera instead of the screen? So mine has a light, which is why I'm able to do this. So even when I present, I just look at the light. So if yours has a light, you can just focus on the light, similar to how you would do like if you were like an anchor or something. Just focus on the light. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So that's usually what I do. I focus on the light while I'm speaking. What are some other things you can do? I'm honestly trying to think of things. That's a really good question. Yeah, I sort of think of my cam as like the person's eyes. So you would never like look down here if a person's eyes were up there, if you were talking to them, or most people wouldn't. So that's typically what I've been doing. I sort of look at the light while talking. And then, you know what it is? When you answer a question, focus in on the screen. And then when you're not answering a question, be like, okay, now I can look at them. But other than that, you're like looking into their eyes up here. And then it's like, now I can look at the screen if they're answering a question for you or something. That's typically how I've been doing it. But you bring up a good point because virtual tips, I feel like I didn't go over. Make sure to have a solid background. Make sure to be wearing professional clothes, at least from the chest up, from what they will see. Try to have a background that is not, that is static. That is static? That is solid, I think I was trying to say. Try to have a background that's solid. So nothing like being in front of a window and you see people walking back and forth. You don't want that because that will be distracting to them. Let's see, some other ones. Make sure your Wi-Fi and things work ahead of time. Make sure your Wi-Fi, your cam, all of that stuff. The day before the career fair, honestly, even if an hour or so before it starts, like really sit down with your laptop and be like, all right, we working, we're charged. You know, you don't want anything to go wrong with that, where things cut off and then all of a sudden you're out of luck. Other things. Like I said, it's helpful to have your resume in front of you, a printed out copy. If you wear glasses, make sure you don't have multiple screens up on your laptop. because they will see inside of your glasses that you are seeing multiple screens. So make sure not to do that. And good lighting, like always. So those are a few of those tips. Like I would say, oh, there is a way, I'll have to check it out, but I think there is a way in Intern X to like minimize your camera so that you're not just staring at yourself, because sometimes people get self-conscious. Like I can't see myself right now. I don't know how I look. Hopefully I look okay. But usually like you sometimes focus on your face or like how you look and then you start fidgeting and stuff. So try to get rid of that screen or keep up. Right now I have the chat box up so I can't see myself. So try to do that so that you're not staring at yourself the whole time. Yeah, those are a few like virtual tips, but I will send out, when I send out the presentation in this recording, I'll also send out a list of virtual tips if that's helpful for interviewing as well. Perfect. But yeah, so keep me updated. Of course, yeah, thank you for your questions as well. Keep me updated, and I look forward to seeing you all at the career fair or potentially prior at the career fair prep days. And like I said, feel free to email me if you need anything, if you want me to look over your resume or cover letter, or if you'd like to sign up for an appointment prior to the career fair. So feel free to let me know.